Timing. Timing can be very beneficial with the irrigation system. We simply decide we want to put fertilizer on the crop. We go out, load the tank, turn on the injection system, and we're instantly putting fertilizer through the water onto the field. Now we do have to be a little careful. There are some problems if we have real windy conditions. We can have drift, and boy, if we had certain chemicals drifting, we could have a real disaster. Because we can apply a lot of different chemicals, but some of them can be very toxic. Or not only to other plants, but also to the fauna around, not just the flora, but even the fauna, the livestock, even other human beings that might be in the area, along with wildlife that we have to be concerned about. So there are some times when we're not going to be able to apply a chemical because of the conditions, mainly wind. It could be temperature as well. Some chemicals are not supposed to be applied if it gets too hot or if it gets too cold. So we have to be concerned about the labeling on the chemical as to whether it's going to be absorbed by the plant or into the ground or whatever we're trying to accomplish with it. And so we do have temperature ranges to follow as well. But other than that, we have a lot of freedom to go ahead and apply it. You know, it doesn't matter if it rained last night and it's too muddy to get through the field with the ground rig. We might still be able to apply it just fine through the sprinkler system. If we have a solid set system, shoot, we can just turn it on. It doesn't have to move anywhere. It can just do its thing and apply the material. Or if we have a center pivot, it'll be able to walk around the field whether or not you could get a tractor out there or not. The pivot will probably still be able to make it just fine. Hand line and wheel line becomes a little bit of a different story in some cases. Uniform application. You know, can we put it on the chemical as uniform or more uniform than an airplane? Can we put it on more uniform than a ground rig? Well, probably. Our uniformity coefficient on most irrigation systems that we're going to be injecting chemicals in is probably going to be 80% plus uniformity. Well, what kind of uniformity do you get when you run a ground rig and then have to run out the ends or the corners and whatever? You know, you get overlap, you get a little off your mark, and you get a little skip sometimes, or again overlap other times. You know, you have to be a pretty good driver to be able to really put down chemical on a ground rig and do it real accurately. And when you come to the end, you have to be able to, shut it off just at the right time and start it just at the right time. And you know, a good operator can do a pretty good job, but you're not always going to get a great operator out there running the equipment. An airplane, you know, every time he makes a pass, that wind could change slightly. It could change direction, it could change velocity. Both of them are going to create differential application rates across the field. You're going to have streaks. And boy, you can really see it in some of these large grain fields. And you'll look across there and you'll say, you know, it really looks unusual. You can look across that field and all of a sudden there'll be like a strip that looks different than the rest of the field. And usually that's because there's more weeds there. And the reason there's more weeds there is because when he made that pass with the plane, the wind had picked up. And it had drifted the chemical off that part of that strip that he was spraying just at that instant and left a little strip of weeds. You can really see it up in this country because we have a wild oat problem, and you get up here in these mountains and there's lots of transient wind when they're trying to fly that chemical on in the early spring, and you'll see strips of wild oats out through the field because you can't get into ground rig it, it's too wet, so they fly it on. And if the wind kicks up at all on a given pass, there'll be a 20-foot strip or so that doesn't get hit, and you'll have a patch of wild oats out through the middle of the field. Looks like a guy almost planted them. That's just the way it ended up being with the wind on the spray rig, or the plane, when he was up in the sky. And it's very common, and you can't have perfect conditions to apply chemicals very often. You're going to get transient winds. Now that's going to affect irrigated application of chemicals some also, but not nearly as radical as it will with something like a plane. And of course now the new spray rigs that they're making, they're putting shrouds on them for the ground rigs, and they have foam markers, you can be right on your mark. You can get pretty effective with ground applicators now. But still, what happens when you come to those odd-shaped parts of the field? You come into a triangle, what do? Do you start shutting nozzles off on the boom? Well, I don't know of any booms that are set up that way. There might be out there somewhere, but you're just kind of stuck with over-applicating into those triangles and the like. Well, hopefully your sprinkler system's set up so that it compensates accordingly, and it's not way over applying chemical at any given spot across that particular field. Now I'm really thinking, when you get into situations like that, we really start thinking about spraying greens and spraying fairways on golf courses, because you get a lot of this undulation. And then, you follow the perimeter and you go around the outside, and then you come back in the middle and you got all kinds of overlap. You're starting to double up a lot of chemical in a lot of spots. And that's going to give you some uneven growth in the process.